These are the most ruthless morons to have ever been featured on the show. And this dude right here made his move as soon as he stepped into the house.
Where are you at?
I have to go change out of my clothes, okay?
Wait, are you thinking what I'm thinking? This dude looks a whole lot like Mario. But guess what? His intentions were anything but friendly. Well, our Mario impersonator over here goes by the name Timothy Isaac. And this dude was in such a rush to get busy that he shut the door and locked it the second that he entered the Sting house. Now, I'm not exactly sure if he did that to prevent anyone from crashing the party or whether it was to prevent the setup from running. But either way, this sneaky little move of his gave off a really bad vibe. Sadly for him, despite being so cautious, he never realized that he'd fallen into a trap until this happened.
It's a little late to be prowling around these parts, huh?
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Why don't you have a seat right over here for me?
Yeah, so the minute that Chris stepped in, Timothy really pushed his creativity to its limits. He had to come up with an excuse to explain his presence at the house, and he had to do it really fast. But you know, as they say, haste is waste. And Timothy had a transient lapse in memory while he tried to whip up some fresh lies. Turns out he couldn't even remember the person's name. You know, the same person he came all this way to meet? But don't you worry, because Chris decided to jog his memory.
What's the girl's name?
I'm not sure.
But Timothy was barely bothered about it. All he cared about was getting busy with the setup. And since that wasn't gonna happen, he tried to lie his way out of the mess he found himself in. However, Chris decided to give him one more chance to tell the truth.
Now, do you want to rethink that and tell the truth this time, or do you want to stick with that story?
Yeah, Timothy already had his mindset, so there was no way he was gonna give up so easily. Ultimately, he decided to ride on the lies a little bit longer.
Well, I don't remember. I was talking to quite a few people.
It's almost 2:30 in the morning. How far did you travel tonight?
This dude has never been in the same room as accountability. But here comes something crazy.
What makes a man get in a car and drive 2 hours?
Yeah, so Timothy actually drove for hours just to make it to the Sting house. He was desperate enough for some action that he had himself a little road trip to get some. However, when Chris started to read the chat logs, Timothy completely lost his shit.
I want to taste you for real, but baby, 15 can get me 20.
Yeah, it probably can. It probably will.
Ooh, man, there was no going back from there. And before you know it, Timothy was taken into custody as soon as he made his exit and thankfully landed a pretty long sentence. But this next guy decided to bring some inappropriate drinks to the party.
Hang out at the bar for a second. I'll be right back down, all right?
All right.
Alonzo Wade walked in with enough booze for a raging frat party. I mean, just look at all of it. This dude wanted to party real hard.
Well, you brought quite the selection tonight.
Yes, sir.
However, that wasn't even the most concerning thing about this guy. Before Chris made his entrance, the cameras caught Alonzo doing something disgusting.
He turns towards the door and he's doing something with the zipper. Now, I still to this day don't know exactly what his plan was.
Oh man, this dude couldn't even wait for the setup to show up. When Chris confronted him about it, the dude simply brushed it away, saying his fly came down all on its own. And if you thought that was a lame excuse, wait till you hear what he said next.
I just wanted a place to drink. I wasn't going to do nothing.
You didn't have any place to drink, so you thought you'd come here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry man, but nobody's gonna believe you. Maybe just quit while you're ahead? It's crazy how someone who had a kid the same age the setup was pretending to be could even think of doing something like this. But hey, he tried to project himself like this perfect dad. I mean, just take a look at why he chose the setup's house to get sloshed.
My daughter's got her friends there and I don't like drinking in front of her.
Yup, as questionable as it sounds, it was just the best answer he could come up with. But guess what? At one point, he simply stopped trying to pretend. And when Chris asked him what would have happened if he wasn't there, you won't believe what this bozo said.
Well, up here, yes. Would I? No. Or maybe.
You could tell that Chris was at a loss for words here.
I'm not going to say I wouldn't. I'm not going to say I would.
Well, this left Chris with only one thing left to do. He revealed his identity and out came the cameras. But Alonzo, well, the man wasn't impressed. Despite that, he did his best to maintain his composure as the cops took him down. So, in the end, the judge showed no mercy while delivering his sentence, and it's safe to say that he landed a punishment fitting of his crime. But if you thought Alonzo's reaction to the cameras was insane, then wait till you see what this next guy has up his sleeve. So this guy strutting into the house as we speak is Nathan Downfor, and this guy was totally unfazed by Chris being there too. The guy simply wanted to finish what he came to do and head right back home. Dude had a one-track mind. He just didn't care about anything else. Not even Chris's intimidating stance.
What are you doing here?
Came to visit somebody?
At one point, I couldn't even tell if he was daydreaming or his brain was working overtime to fabricate his next set of lies. And this admittedly strange demeanor even left Chris confused.
I mean, there seems little doubt as to what you wanted to do here, based upon the chat.
Even when Chris did the dreaded deed of reading out his chats, which were absolutely disgusting, might I add, Nathan wasn't fazed at all.
Run around the house nude.
Until finally, the dude broke the silence.
You're not actually facing the person, so you don't have to deal with the embarrassment of saying those sort of things to their face.
So there was absolutely no logic in his reasoning. And out of nowhere, Nathan decided to get, kind of poetic.
Fantasies dreamed up online or in your mind. Things you might not be able to willingly do when it comes down to it.
Plus, to make things even worse, when Chris asked him what should happen to him, this is how he responded.
I'm not sure. I don't know what the law says about this.
Well, that's when Chris decided to give him a reality check, but Nathan couldn't understand the gravity of the situation he was in.
But it's illegal for someone to use the internet to solicit somebody who's 13 for sex.
That I was unaware.
Okay, now that was hard to believe. But Nathan stood his ground. Eventually, he was thankfully taken into custody and brought into an interrogation room. And finally, he decided to open his mouth.
We could spend time together, watch a movie, whatever, but there wouldn't be anything beyond that.
Lies again. You see, people like Nathan are really hard to read. They hide behind poker faces that are pretty tough to crack. Just like this next guy, who took his time to get comfortable before revealing his true colors. Well, I think you remember a guy who wanted to pull a cat into the act. But this dude had some other plans.
He even says he wants to involve a dog.
Yup, you heard that right. Joe Wunderler wanted to get a dog involved too. Ugh. Obviously, Chris wasn't happy with that idea, so he decided to make his displeasure known.
What's happening?
Not much.
What are you here for?
With this prick, there was no beating around the bush. Chris got right into business, and soon, Joe started to crumble under the pressure.
Why are you so nervous?
I just get nervous.
If you ask me, Chris showed no mercy to this guy. He fired questions at him one after the other without giving Joe any time to think.
How old is Aaron?
She didn't tell me.
You see, this dude had indulged in a very graphic conversation with the setup. Something that I'm not even gonna repeat here. But when Chris started to read from those chat logs, Joe started to lose his cool.
And you say, would you ever try anal? Quite a Romeo.
You see, this dude was trying his best to deflect the blame. But no matter how hard he tried, it was quite obvious to everyone witnessing the confrontation. Joe was straight up lying through his teeth. And I don't know how, but for some weird reason, he thought this next statement would have been able to give him the upper hand.
I'm a lonely guy, what can I say?
I mean, how many times have you seen these guys rant about loneliness? It feels like some of these guys are reading off the same cue card sometimes. But wait, things were about to get even crazier. If things weren't already bad for Joe, you won't believe what was revealed about him next.
An Army sergeant stationed at Fort Belvoir at the Intelligence and Security Command.
Well, that explains why this dude was sweating bullets throughout the entire conversation. This little gig was gonna cost him his job and his whole life. And by this point, Chris was completely through with them.
Seeing a psychiatrist right now.
Well, it doesn't look like it's working too well based upon all this.
The man was seeing red. It's really sad that someone of that position was willing to stoop this low. You see, frustration and boredom are a part of life, but that doesn't mean you can get busy doing things that could put you behind bars, and the person you do it with can face some serious lifelong trauma. Anyway, I really hope Joe learned his lesson. But I really can't say the same about this next guy. So, Josh had been talking to the setup online for almost a week before he finally made his move. When the setup revealed that she had a huge TV back home, Josh hatched a plan. He took the first opportunity he could to propose an evening together where they could watch movies and, you know, go with the flow. Netflix and chill before Netflix even did streaming. Anyway, if that wasn't enough, he then said something shocking.
We can get drunk if you want to, if it will make it feel that much better.
Yeah, that's a crime, dude. You see, this man had the whole thing planned out. He wanted to get the setup wasted, then take advantage of her.
No, I'll explain when you get down.
Okay.
Now, this dude might look innocent, but once you dig deeper into his chat logs, his real identity would surface. And let's not forget how he fiddled around with his pants as soon as he entered the house. I mean, clearly, he couldn't keep it there for much longer. But that was Chris's cue to burst his bubble. When Chris confronted him, Josh turned over a new leaf and decided to bring religion into the picture.
Believe it or not, says he also turned to the church for guidance.
So, did he have some heavenly intervention while dropping those nasty messages on the chat online? It's absolutely crazy how these weirdos can whip up the most insane excuses when the noose tightens around their neck. And this dude seemed to go on and on about the religion card. Apparently, he had talked to a pastor about his obsession with such kind of behavior, and despite the pastor's disapproval, here he was, trying to put his dirty intentions to work anyway. When Chris decided to dive deeper and get more information from him, this dude decided to play it simple.
To make new friends.
To make new friends.
Yes,
with
sir.
a 13-year-old girl home alone.
Of course, he had to dish out the classic making new friends approach too. If you even looked at this dude's chats for even a second, you know that there was nothing friendly about it, nothing at all. But Josh wouldn't stop, he just continued to lie, expecting any one of them to get him out of trouble.
I carry that with me all the time.
But you said you didn't bring any, and you did.
He actually tried to search his pockets to prove his innocence that he didn't carry protection with him. You see, he had no idea that the cameras were watching him, and each and every move was being recorded. Eventually, Chris bombarded him with facts, and Josh realized that his time was up. And when his truth came out, all he could do was this.
I corrected myself. I'm sorry.
Well, sometimes it's just better to own up than to make a fool out of yourself. But this next guy didn't seem to get the memo.
Not here.
If you ask me, I think David Oskin was a guy who worked with tremendous focus. Only this time, his focus was all on the wrong things. Now this dude was also in a rush to get things over and done with. And since David didn't want to waste any time, neither did Chris.
How can I help you tonight?
I don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah, as lame as that sounded, that was David's response to anything and everything that Chris asked him. And it wasn't long before David started venting.
She was young,
Young. How young?
pretty young.
Pretty young, as in what age?
It was almost like David knew what he had done, but he was trying to tiptoe around it, thinking Chris would let him go at any time. But that wasn't part of the deal. And soon, David realized that he had to come up with better excuses to get out of there without getting in trouble. However, Chris wasn't ready to back down.
So you were talking online with a girl named Sarah who's 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you think that was appropriate?
David was just lying, and lying. He did everything possible to make the situation better for himself, but Chris just put him in his place. And then out of nowhere, David said something that even Chris didn't expect.
Against my religion.
It's against your religion.
Oh, if it was really against his religion, then why was he here in the first place? Something really doesn't add up.
But you also say, in the next breath, have you ever seen a blank, meaning penis?
Doesn't look very religious now, does it? And obviously, David didn't have an answer for that. He didn't really have an answer for anything, but I'd figure I'd make myself clear. However, he knew that there was no way out of here.
I have on the internet, she says, then you say, so do you want to see mine?
At one point, he looked like he was embarrassed of his own chats, but Chris being Chris didn't stop there.
I shouldn't do it.
You can play with mine.
To me, it just looked like there was one thing running on David's mind. He wanted to get out of the house as soon as possible. However, Chris was in no mood to put an end to this confrontation. And then, just when you thought he'd surrender, the guy made the craziest statement I've ever heard.
I don't even use yellow even because of this.
He really thought Chris would believe his story and let him off the hook. But as it always goes on TCAP, it wasn't about to end that way. But wait, before making his exit, David decided to put on a little show.
Can end my life. Please don't you. This is my religion. I shouldn't do that.
Anyway, the minute this jerk stepped out of the house, police officers were ready to pounce on him. David's excuse didn't get him very far, but what's your excuse for not pressing that like button right here? Now, don't forget to subscribe and turn on my post notifications too. And well, if you could think of any more weirdos that fit the bill for a video like this, make sure to drop those names in the comment section down below, or maybe just hit me up on my channel's Discord server. And while you're at it, make sure to check my next video right here since it's even better.